In pursuing this channel, there are certain pressures. Not just this channel, all channels that are doing YouTube or that are doing some level of media have various pressures. They have the pressure of whatever they themselves want to do, meaning the content that drives them, meaning this channel is named Jamarl Thomas. I do the content that I like, that I find interesting, but they have a secondary drive of people watching because they get paid based off the way people watch and the number of ads that can be displayed. Corporate media is no different in this. In fact, you can make an argument that there's more of a bias towards getting people to advertise those dollars and views. They monetize your reality. That reality, to some degree, is shaped off of what they can get you to click onto for interest reasons, less about what is informing to you. I'm going to show you that in action. And I'm going to show you that in action using one Bernie Sanders as an example. Corporate media manufacturing a story that is not a story. And the story that's more interesting, that's more relevant and valid to you, not being shown to you because that story is not the story that would generate the clicks. Conflict. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you enjoy this content and you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please consider supporting this content through PayPal or Patreon. Not to mention, if you enjoy and you actually like this video, like it and share it. We are trying to expand, and not just expand, we're also trying to push back on the corporate nonsense that they put out attacking Sanders. They attack him whether he goes to the left or whether he goes to the right. And I don't mean that in a political sense. I just mean that they manufacture a story either way, even when there's not really a story to manufacture. They create and craft one that generates a certain degree of controversy. Bernie Sanders goes on CNN. Now, the Sanders campaign has complained about not getting fair press coverage, and they are right. And in fact, I am going to show you a video at the end of this, about his coverage on MSNBC. But he goes on CNN, and then CNN has done dodgy polls dealing with Sanders and everything. He is not going to get a fair shot. And it's almost as if they had their panties in a bunch when he went on Fox News and they were pissed off about it. She even alludes to that here. This starts off with her asking him about Medicare for all. I don't mind that. And I know some people may take issue with the framing of it. Fair enough. Sanders is going to push back on it. And he's going to make it clear to her that, no, you're misunderstanding and you're not talking about this in the way that this is. It's thought out. Fine. Then, at the end of it, she says, hey, tell us something nice about your political opponent, Elizabeth Warren. You guys are going to be on a debate stage together. That is bizarre. That's bizarre. And beyond that point, he's not there for that. If you are just passively looking at this and you're not all that engaged in politics, you may think that's perfectly fine, but she's doing that for political reasons. The media is not just a media organization. They have political intentions on their own, and they get that across. And in this kind of passive framing where the audience is not fully paying attention, they may not necessarily get it, but they walk away thinking, oh, he said something nice about Warren, which was the point of it. He's not there to talk about Warren. Warren is a political opponent of his. You know she's a political opponent. You're bringing it up for reasons that go beyond just the reasons that you give it. But beyond that point, I don't mind the Medicare for all thing. She then brings in the obligatory, oh, you had staff issues. You had staff issues. The staff issue that she's talking about is the Sanders campaign has a union. That is something no other campaign has ever had. That's the interesting news. That's the news that is informative to the rest of the American public because it brings up the notion of union, and it brings up one of the points that the other campaigns don't have unions, regardless of anything that they talk about unions. And this campaign not only says it, but they believe in it. Nobody forced them to do it. They did it because they believe in it and they want to make it a thing. He is even hurt by doing so, and he does it anyway. He does it anyway. That's not the part that they want to talk about, because that part is kind of interesting, but that's not the controversy. They need controversy. They need something that will draw eyes. what they give you in corporate media is not news that you need. It's not news that is even that informs the way you go about your affairs. They are monetized and incentivized to give you conflict, controversy, stabbings, killings, train crashes. This guy got hit over the head. Things that will draw your attention, not things that inform your opinion. Those are different things. I hope you understand what I mean by that. This is the interview that Sanders has on CNN. Now, this interview go watch. It's not a bad interview. Gets taken to Bernie Sanders boasts about private insurance, best healthcare plan you can imagine. Now, this dings him. CNN's anchor, Poppy Harrow, exposed some major weaknesses in Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan, but she didn't. If you didn't watch the video and you just read this, you may come away with thinking that. But the fact of the matter is, watch the video for yourself. She did not. By grilling the independent Vermont senator on his promise that Americans will be able to keep their doctors under his plan, and by getting him to brag that if the staff's private healthcare plan is the best healthcare you could imagine. All right. This gets further down the rabbit hole of spectacle and clickbait. Bernie Sanders staffers have the best private healthcare insurance money can buy, and dings them for providing good healthcare. Seriously, the article attacks him for providing good health care to his staff. If Bernie Sanders didn't provide good health care, they would say socialist doesn't provide the best health care to his staffers. I hope you understand what I mean. The goal is to make a story that draws eyes, and they're going to make that story regardless of what the individual does. The individual can be Martin Luther King, and they would find a story about attacking Martin Luther King. The same thing is true in this case. Bernie Sanders pays $15 an hour minimum wage and higher than that. I think he pays like $17. There's a staff dispute where these guys are negotiating on the price. The media creates a narrative. Bernie Sanders, who's pushing for $15 an hour, is not paying his staff $15 an hour. Now, Bernie Sanders is not involved in each and every staffing decision. You have people below him making those choices. Bernie Sanders' point was, I want to pay these people at least $15 or more. They were originally getting paid $17 an hour, but in the pressures of the campaign, you find that they end up working longer hours. They go back and say, look, we're working longer hours. We want to get paid more. And then the issue becomes up for healthcare. And it's like, well, the amount that we're getting paid effectively goes down if we have to add in healthcare costs. It was a negotiation between the union and the other person. They did what they were supposed to do. And they did something that no other campaign is doing. The odd part about this is, it's not drawing a circle around the fact that the other campaigns are not doing this, that the other campaigns don't provide healthcare insurance to this degree, that the other campaigns are not covering these costs or paying as much. That's not the story. The story becomes, Bernie Sanders is doing this, but we're going to bring a story around the fact that he's not doing this to the degree that was originally agreed upon, forgetting the fact that the other campaigns aren't doing it at all. I hope you get my point. Corporate media is looking to craft a story. They just want to craft a story. It's not necessarily something that informs you per se. It's something that can draw your eyes and attention to it to create a certain degree of controversy, because a controversy is the thing that generates revenue. They are literally hitting Sanders for providing the best health care of all of the insurance of all of the campaigns. Of course, it's obligatory to bring up the labor part. But Sanders, in this video, points and says, look, I'm covering the healthcare costs, by the way. So not only does my staff have the best healthcare of any campaign, I am covering 100% of the costs. Technically, he's covering 100% of the costs for the lower wages of the campaign, meaning for the people who are not paid as well in his campaign. They're still making, I think, $17 an hour. But up to a certain point, he's covering all of the healthcare costs. At another level of payment, meaning the upper echelon of people within the campaign circuit, he's paying 80%. They attack him for this, saying, oh, Sanders doesn't know what's in his own campaign. Look, this is what's going to take place for the duration of the campaign. If you remember, they didn't believe that Donald Trump had any chance. They talked down on Trump and everything else. Trump won. This is a door you have to walk through. It's just this point is taking place on the left. Sanders is calling this out now because he's finally seeing this as being dramatically unfair, and he's making it known that it's unfair. The media at this point is something that needs to be taken as a hostile element. And I don't mean that to the comic book way that Trump is talking about, but I do mean it from the standpoint of looking at them as something that is not your friend. When he got on that Fox News stage, he looked at them as hostile actors because they were hostile actors. And the irony of it is they treated him more fair than CNN or MSNBC treats him. This struggling organization called Hot Air, a failure of a news agency, if they're not a news agency at all, it's just a clickbait magazine, is literally attacking the man for providing good health care. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. So staff on Team Sanders is getting the best healthcare plan you can imagine in his private plan. Never mind the fact that he appears confused about the deal he helped strike in terms of how much the premium costs are covered. You act as if the guy who's at the top is paying attention to each and every little minute decision at the bottom. This is just a political way of tagging the person. That's all. It's just politics. It's gamesmanship. It's just trying to ding them. Let's keep going. Some random person is going to come onto this trash and they're going to think there's a reality to it. Clearly, they're now getting considerably better than they would expect from so right here. Clearly, what they're getting is considerably better than what they could expect from some sort of single-payer government plan, assuming the doctor they like stay in it and don't only take private insurance. And then they talking about Sanders, who probably never ran a business in his life. I mean, this is the route that they're going with this. Right here. If nothing else, it seems as if Senator Sanders is getting a crash course in the difference between arguing about healthcare insurance and healthcare policy and the abstract of having to deal with the realities of it as an employer. Small wonder, since Sanders has spent most of his entire adult life living off paychecks, government paychecks, and probably never had to worry about paying workers of an organization the size of a small company. I mean, considering the fact that he ran for office last time around, and that he's had to pay payroll as senator. But yeah, sure, totally. Will this lesson sink in for Sanders considering the demands of his campaign workers? I rather doubt they'd be satisfied with losing the best imagined health insurance that their employers. Here's the thing. Not everybody are selfish fucks. Meaning, you would not have to negotiate the fact that healthcare is included in it if Medicare for All was already in play. Meaning, you would be able to negotiate for something else as opposed to have to negotiate for your health care. This is one of the dumbest arguments that I've heard people make. Oh man, if Medicare for All was in play, I mean, these people would lose the benefits that they got from... No, they would just get benefits from something else. Medicare for All at that point would just be taken off the table as something that they would have to argue and complain about. And fact of the matter is, Sanders is paying 100% for people at a certain level. But that wouldn't even be on the table as a need to negotiate for health care if Medicare for All was in play and health care was just taken off the table as something to need to negotiate. I hope you understand what I mean. This argument that, oh, these people lose something by having Medicare for All in play and not having to negotiate this in the context of wages. I don't know why that's an argument. If Medicare for All is off the table, I would imagine that the thing that you negotiate for would be something else instead of the health care, because health care would be covered. And whether the person was homeless and living off the street or whether the person was a corporate CEO, they would have top shelf health care. As somebody who's traveled in other countries and has seen other countries enact this, it is sad. It is sad that some people in this country would argue against ensuring that each and every person in this country is covered with high quality health care. That woman on CNN was pushing on him on something that I think is a fair point. You said people are going to keep their doctors. Are people going to be able to keep their doctors? Let him argue that. He needs to be able to argue that. That's a point that he's going to be hit with over and over again, and he needs to have a good answer for that. Iron it out now. I don't take issue with that. My issue is at the end, hey, Elizabeth Warren is a really good candidate, right? Right. Say something nice about Elizabeth Warren. I take issue with that. I take issue with trashy articles dinging him for providing high quality health insurance. And for Mediaite articles that misinterpret or misrepresent what took place in the interview. The media is not going to be fair to Sanders. We should get in our heads. Take a look at this.
Can I bring up the donkey in the room?
Bernie?
No.
Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl.
Winky put this up. And Winkle the Bernie Bureau he's done voiceovers for me, so I hope he's okay with me showing this. And I'm giving him credit, even though I don't know if he had it on his channel. I don't know where this came from. But MSNBC has a Sanders problem. But it's not just MSNBC. It's also CNN. Many of these guys do not like Sanders. Sanders has called this out on more than one occasion. Take a look at this.
Sanders fading is a bigger story than people have given her credit for.
The previous set of numbers about Kamala Harris seems to suggest that Bernie bros are actually a real thing.
He's just waving his arms around, talking about revolution and all. Where we are going, we won't need roads. I mean, one of the things I always hear from folks.
Has Bernie Sanders ever said that we don't need roads? That's what Chris Matthews just said. Let's keep going. Nobody ever pushes back on this, by the way. And the MSNBC audience is just taking this in. Look, part of the test, the reason why this is important is because we have these weird receptor things in our heads that we tend to mimic what we consider to be our outside world. Meaning, when you're watching a movie and something sad is taking place in a movie, you know it's not real. It could even be a cartoon and people will cry at Bambi. It's not real. It doesn't matter if it's not real. The thing in your head, to some degree, makes it real. It makes you empathize with what's taking place in your outside world. That's somewhat of a survival mechanism, but that gets tricked in many other capacities. One of these things is in a political sense. The media tells you something. You take it as the outside world, as if that is indeed a factor or a real thing in the outside world. Fact of the matter is media just giving you a bit of information. The people on that is parroting to you in a way where you are okay with them because clearly you are watching that particular show. You may consider yourself a Democrat. You may consider yourself whatever that particular person is. And that person is telling you stuff about Sanders that you are internalizing. When they were showing those polls that says Sanders didn't have a chance, they're showing you those polls for a reason to get across here that Sanders didn't have a chance. You might as well vote for the other person. In this case, TYT, MSNBC, these guys have been pushing Elizabeth Warren as the candidate that they want. And in doing so, they've been denigrating Sanders. And they've been doing it in this kind of subtweet way. This has been all over MSNBC, and it's been persistent. They can lie all they want to say that's not true, but it's been persistent. The moment that you have somebody on your network and say, the guy makes my skin crawl, that tells me everything I need to know about your network.
Who aren't necessarily on the Bernie bus, so to speak, is that he's not really a Democrat.
I saw Bernie Sanders trying to raise money off of it. Yeah, my timeline's going to be on fire. I thought it was horrible.
Then do you see any crossover, at least in those who are at his events, who kind of look and sound like Trump supporters? When you say he attracts those who feel like they're struggling to be heard and get their bills paid and their voices heard, that sounds like a Trump voter. I see him as sort of a non...
What that dingbat just said is that poor people sound like Trump voters. That people on Sanders' bandwagon saying we having difficulty paying our bills. The society is not working for us. She's talking about nearly half of the population. And she's like, those people who are struggling to make their bills meet, and they're Sanders supporters, they sound like Trump voters. These people are millionaires. These people are not in your class. They don't quite understand elements of your class. They've been screaming about Trump and Russia despite the fact that only 1% of the population cares about it. I just want to get it across to you that they have a class difference on these networks. And it comes across. Love Warren. That should tell you something.
Pro-woman candidate.
And some people say that you hurt Hillary Clinton's candidacy. Bernie Sanders has done nothing between 2016 and today to expand his base, to expand his policies.
The House of Representatives has just passed a $15 minimum wage bill. In 2016, they said that was radical, that could never take place, that was loony, that was over. House of Representatives, whether they mean it or not, just passed a minimum wage bill. Multiple industries throughout the state, Amazon included, upped their wages to $15 an hour minimum wage. In New York, what's his name? Bloomberg was happy as a lark to be on stage. Not Bloomberg, I'm sorry. I can't think of his name. No, it might have been Bloomberg. Happy to be on stage with Sanders to announce, hey, we're expanding college for the various people, for kids in this country. But no, he didn't do anything. The fact that the debate stage, that the things that they were talking about, it was a world revolving around Sanders. Nope, didn't do anything at all. The fact that many of the Democrats have now signed on to the Medicare for All bill didn't do anything at all. You're living in a world of Sanders, and you're lying to your constituents. This is the media. I'm showing this because I want to show you how corporate media manufacture stories. Do you realize they're still saying Bernie bros and all this other stuff? Do you realize half of Sanders support are women? Literally 50%. And beyond that point, most of Sanders support is coming from poor and minorities. Bernie bros. He's the white candidate. Those are manufactured stories. Look at the polling. Look at the data. It shows it. The polling that just recently came out yesterday, I did the polls themselves. Most of Sanders' support are coming from poor minorities. Just saying. Let's keep going.
Bernie?
No.
To expand his base, to expand his policies.
He seemed like a socialist from the 1950s yelling at people in the same screechy voice, without smiling, without any kind of personal connection.
Bernie Sanders has been talking about these same policies essentially since he's been in public service for the past 25, 30 years.
She's attacking him for being consistent. We don't have Medicare for all. We haven't expanded Social Security. We haven't had a $15 an hour minimum wage increase. These are issues that he's been pushing for because these issues haven't taken hold, nor have these things changed. We are at a time where these things have started to catch fire to some degree, in which case he's now found his time. But how can you attack somebody for being consistent? Maybe that's why you guys love the fact that Elizabeth Warren and some of these other people are running in the race, because they can essentially just latch on to anything that comes up. And I suspect they realize she's somewhat of a dodgy, shapeless figure, in which case that whatever she's saying now in the primaries is going to change when she gets into the main election, as opposed to Sanders, who that is not going to be true. He's consistent. How dare he be consistent? That's so bizarre. And yet this is what they're hitting him for. Like, I'm showing this to show how obscene this is. He's too consistent. He's too consistent. We like Warren. She's less so. Not to mention she's going to take a ton of money, so she's going to be a shapeable factor.
But he actually hasn't done anything to pass them, right? He's talked a lot about them, but we have not seen any of these policies signed into law.
What happened with Hillary and what's his name?
Exactly.
You would take the risk.
I am excited.
Donald Trump
are you
advantage.
asking out of every candidate?
He's also saying the same thing.
No, she's not. She's not. She's just asking that of you. They dislike you.
He said in 2016, this time around, I think that's not working.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. I think he kind of got lost in the shuffle. Other people have kind of taken those issues away from him, and he looked like the angry man in the center of the stage saying, "Get off my lawn."
Nobody has taken the issues away from him. People have given a voice to it. They have pretended in the way that people tend to pretend that they are something that they are not. But I don't think the American public is buying into that. I mean, ultimately, Joe Biden is still at the top. For the most part, that's more of an electability thing, not because they believe Joe Biden is going to do anything. They just think he's going to beat Trump. You have Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris that are firmly in the number 3 position. Number 3 position. They haven't budged in that number 3 position. They've been fighting back and forth. And Sanders is Wisconsin number 2. He hasn't gone anywhere. You're pretending as if he's gone somewhere. And Joe Biden has been a falling rock. Sanders has been consistent. I mean, look, I've been honest with you with the polling. People were dicey on democratic socialism. Depending on how you ask the question for Medicare for all, they either agree or disagree with it to the tune of 70% or agree with it 40%. It just depends on how you ask the question. And as opposed to Biden, Biden is a falling rock that I don't think is going to make it through the primary. They're in a world of Sanders, and the stuff that they're arguing on is whether or not you agree or disagree with Sanders. Harris has given voice to Medicare for all, even though I don't believe it. Warren has given voice to Medicare for all, even though I don't really believe it. And all of these people, for the most part, are agreeing or disagreeing with elements of Sanders. No, they're not going to be fair to him. I don't expect them to be fair to him. I am, however, going to call it out when I see it. Thanks all. Like and share.